Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are premiering. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive thanks and appreciation to Guns of Navarone RMP, Troy Shuka, Bosnail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, David Wayne Foster, and massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'm going to raise the mic on whoever is in Discord and G+, so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
How are you?
Again?
It's the Nathan Oakley.
That's me. Hello, what's your name?
I'm a big fan.
Excellent. What's your name?
Samsar.
Samsar.
Mm-hmm.
Very pleased to make your acquaintance there, Samsar.
I never actually been here before.
That's okay, don't be scared.
Hey, Nathan.
Yes, Neil.
Do you know the story about April Fools? How they came up with it?
No, I don't think I do.
I think you'll appreciate it because the new year used to be on April 1st. When they changed it, a lot of people didn't want to go along with it. So they stood to the April and they celebrated New Year's on April 1st. So they were known as, those April Fools. And that's the story.
That's interesting.
I heard you talking about not being happy about New Year's being in January, so I figured you'd be happy to know that it's really not. It's in April, like you said.
Interesting. My folks got married on April Fool's Day.
Well, they weren't no fools because they had you.
Maybe. I see. It's propaganda is what you're saying.
Correct.
They put it into the middle of winter and people went, that's just silly. And they went, let's call those people silly.
Mic check.
Hey, 10.
Gotcha.
All right. Yeah, I had to restart.
Oh, thank you for that, Neil. I did like that a lot.
You know, I did not know that Friday was Friday. I thought it was Saturday. So I was very upset that I did not make the show. I'm like, you kidding me? Today's only Friday? This is at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm finding out. I was like, I missed Flat Earth Debate.
I thought it was Saturday too. I was correcting Nathan.
I did see you in the chat saying, I'm really gutted I missed this show.
Yeah, I was voicing my opinion on chat.
But the reason you caught it was because I spread those shows out. Some people moan at me about doing that. They're like, "Hey, I've seen this before," and it's like, well, you've seen it in a completely different time slot. You know, by coincidence, you've seen it where I've happened to have spread it out, but it won't be at the exact same time. I am trying to appeal to a different audience when I put them on the second channel, or put them on the main channel, and they've already been on the second channel. In other words, they're unique to the main channel, because you can't not be. But, you know, I'll put them out at a time that they haven't been seen. So I'll generally try and weigh up, based on the comments, or if it's a members-only video, how many people have watched it and how many people have commented on it, which is the most appropriate to put out over the weekend. In other words, although I don't label them as such, they're basically the best-ofs that go out on the main channel, and that just happened to be the one that you were in going, oh, I'm gutted I missed this. Now, obviously I didn't say that to you in the chat, but it's like, well, this did actually air, I think it was 3 days ago on the second channel. But obviously the second channel's got far less subscribers, so most people don't actually see them when they go out on the second channel. I'm not saying you're not subscribed, but I'm just saying that there's a reason why they'll go out, and the avid fans might go, oh, well, I've seen this before. It's like, well, I record 5 days a week, and in between recording, while the recording is running, I go live 5 times a week, right? But I've got 14 slots to fill, right? So there's 2 time slots each day, and I do both on every single day of the week. But there's actually only 10 to go into 14 slots, so obviously you can't have every single one of them be new. But my point is that that had already gone out, so to you, you're like, I'm glad I caught it. It's like, well, you caught it because I put it out again. Make sense? Yeah, it tends to be the better ones that I'll put out more than once. Hi, John.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good, John.
We good? We were just told by Neil that April Fool's Day is what was originally celebrated as the New Year. But then when they changed the calendar, then the people who went, oh, that's just stupid, will continue to celebrate on that day, got labelled April Fools. According to Neil.
Yeah, from the people that were celebrating it in January, they referred to the people still selling it in April as April Fools. Ah, those April Fools, they don't change.
Yet to cite a source for this information, but very nice story all the same.
I cite Neil as the source.
A pretty good historic standard you've set there.
I heard it from a very well-known radio guy.
And it's true because he made it up himself.
90% of all things are made up on the spot, right?
No, you get it right. It's 64.7% of all statistics are made up on the spot.
Well, I go 90 of everything on the spot. It serves me well.
I don't remember what the guy's name is now to quote him, but Richard D. Hall, that's it. He says, don't believe anything that you hear and only believe half of what you see. Cottoned onto that and memorized it because at the time I remember thinking that'll go over a lot of people's heads because it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? How can you ignore or only believe half of what you see? So why would that be relevant and memorable to me? I'm asking you to guess. Go on.
Yeah, let's see. That would, if it's half of what you see, you're going through. So the magicians, they have ways of showing you things that aren't real, that appear real.
Perfect. And how would that be relevant to us?
Oh, let's see. We're on this topic of space, a place that doesn't exist. That'd be one of them.
Well, it was around about the time that I heard him say that for the first time, when we were discussing the clock that Ranty Flat Earth had presented. And I was saying it's just a clock at 20 miles. That's the full description. But what you're told to see is a holographic projection of a clock from behind the reified edge of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curve, by way of a refracted value utilising an hour that's been debunked by the Black Swan. Now that's their explanation of what you see. That's what you've got to believe. It's a mirage, right?
Right.
Well, that's when you actually think about what Richard D. Hall says, only believe half of what you see. Well, in that context, what you saw was a mirage. Only believe half of what you see. It's not a mirage, it's just a clock at 20 miles away. You can just see it.
Yep. They've got that one on the horizon. They've got stuff supposedly in the violation of second law, which is having a sky vacuum next to our Earth's air. There's a lot of them, I'm sure.
I won't talk too much about it though, because he's an anti-flat earther. Probably because he paid a lot of money for his intro sequence, which has a globe transitioning to the low view of some town, presumably his hometown or something.
Well, maybe he's just believed the wrong half.
Just when you put your support or your mark or your theory behind something colloquial, of course, like aliens, for example, or whatever, you know, if you get heavily invested in that and then you realise that the narrative can't fit your current belief, then what's the first reaction? Well, poo-poo the people that have highlighted how your narrative's not true. In this case, the heliocentric model. And we discussed this many times, but when you look at Scientology, it's basically just an off-spin or offshoot of heliocentrism. It's very much based in the heliocentric narrative. But do they get into a tiz about us? Well, no. Well, why not? Because we're essentially destroying their paradigm as much as we are any other globe-believing heliocentrist. No difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe when the globe religion is falling to the wayside, I could say that in a current tense rather, as it's falling by the wayside, would that be the way of keeping hold of the narrative for heliocentrism in a controlled way that's, you know, potentially ridiculed, you know, bled dry for its financial gains and control over the elites, and then merely utilised as a controlled opposition narrative going forward into the future, because they all want to control all narratives, don't they? Well, even if we're no longer part of a heliocentric world, that's still obviously a narrative that's been very prevalent for a very, what we would perceive as a fairly, well, we even argue against that, I was going to say for a long time, but we argue against that in some contexts too. So, you know, well, that's something they still going to want to retain control of to a certain extent, even if it's relinquished as the Western world view. And maybe Scientology is their way of keeping it under some sort of crazy controlled up narrative in the future.
Well, they have various, how can I put it, more than one choice. So Scientology would be one of them. UFOs would be another. Aliens and people giving testimony of aliens, and so now it's all in the news. UFOs, aliens. What's those 7 lights in the sky? They held a pattern. Oh my gosh, you know. And then, oh yes, I was abducted by an alien, and this is what happened. And so now the government jumps in on aliens. Okay, we have secret files that are about to be revealed. So anything to keep that second law of thermodynamics violation thing alive.
And the whole idea of unidentified flying objects in most instances probably just military test vehicles. That narrative attached to a sky vacuum with destinations in the form of the lights we see, that all falls by the wayside too. And obviously those two things have been very much attached. As I say it, I noticed that my what's it called, wallpaper engine, like an animated desktop background that I use just to do my intro, and it's got a little like a radar scanner, and next to it it's got some what looks like Matrix style old school, you know, 1980s green font, and it just keeps saying UFO, UFO, UFO. So obviously the scanner's looking for USOs according to this this animated wallpaper someone's made. In other words, it's so ingrained in the Western worldview that even somebody coming up with an animated desktop will, you know, have that sort of idea of things out in the Neverland that is the sky vacuum. You know, the whole paradigm is, yeah, it got its own controlled opposition within its own narrative. It's weird, to have aliens ridiculed, right? And then you get to a turning point where they just say, yeah, they're real statistically. Or statistically,
well, they conditioned us through TV so much. I remember in the 60s, my favorite Martian was black and white series. Obviously a Martian, and he had two antennas going up at the back of his head. And then later on, you had Mork and Mindy. Robin Williams came from somewhere else. And then you've got all the classics like Star Trek and all of those space movies in that genre. Then you got the cartoons, the magazine, Marvel comics. I mean, the conditioning has been steady and relentless.
Yeah, and simultaneously ridiculed.
Yeah.
Weird, isn't it?
Except when you want to sit down and just discuss it and then start putting out good questions and stripping away the lies, then they all get huffed up and puffed up and get mad at you.
A fair few people in Discord and hardly anybody's talking. I'd have thought we'd have had an interruption by now. No, they are all.
Hey, Nathan, how are you?
Very well, Rams. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Excellent.
This is my first test run on my new mic.
Yeah, I'm adjusting your volume to match your beautiful new dulcet tones.
I know I had to turn my volume down when he came on.
Are my levels all right?
So good.
Sound ace.
Excellent.
Yeah, your mic is good.
Very good.
So what's new, Rams?
Just the year so far.
And nothing then.
Yeah, nothing.
You guys use the beaches now?
Yeah, I think so.
That's good, I suppose. The little things we should be
Yeah.
thankful for these days, it seems.
Yeah.
I want you to know I'm in torture right now. I have to wear my mask the whole freaking day.
You're a contractor. You're on a site, right?
Just pretend there's asbestos
St. James
in the air.
Theater. It's the St. James Theater, right? Yeah, St. James Theater.
If you wear a mask, let's say cut a slit right through where the mouth is, would you still get in trouble or would you get away with that?
Only you can find that out. I wouldn't want to give people advice either way. Said it before and I'll say it again.
Well, in that case, you're legally wearing a mask if it's a legal matter. And yeah, it's just that it has a hole in it.
Anti-hole police will be around.
Shouldn't do things that's going to antagonize your life, right? If that's potentially going to cause you aggravation for whatever reason, then just don't do it. Not because, yeah, when you've got your little straw man coat on and you're out in society, you've got to abide by the rules. Now, I don't like the rules. I could moan all day about them. But when you see the YouTube videos of people who just decide to flagrantly, if I could say the word, break the rules, they just get in trouble. And they argue the toss about why they shouldn't be in trouble, but they're in trouble, right? Well, initially, when the laws all changed, I kicked up a stink, moaned like buggery, and then accepted what they were telling you to accept, which was accept it or else, this is the new normal. Well, can either put yourself in a position where you can draw comparisons all you like to actual laws that you think should apply always, like, you know, don't steal from people. Well, if you look at it in the same way, you can then say, well, okay, that would get me in trouble, so I'll avoid doing that then. Now, you could compare it and go, yeah, but it's not unreasonable that they're doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, that's the law of the land that you live in, and you've got to deal with it. I don't want any free man crap back about me saying law of the land either. I'm just saying that's the law of the way the matrix society you live in, if you want to be a conspiratard about my language. Right? That's just the way it is, in other words. Deal with it. It's the new normal to accept it. Now, if you do things that get you in trouble, don't expect any sympathy. You know, and as much as you can bleat and moan about whether or not you like the new rules and regulations, it's just tough. And unfortunately, I've lost all sympathy for people who moan about it now, a year after the fact, which is what it is, regardless of where people think it might have been changed. That's how long it's been now. Let's just accept it, deal with it.
Right. There are certain stores in California that don't even enforce it, and then there are stores that do. So I just go to stores that don't. Albertsons, you walk in, it's a grocery store. They've never enforced it. You don't wear a mask. Lowe's and Home Depot don't enforce it. I always walk in there without a mask.
Right.
The smaller mom and pop stores, usually the ones that are barely open, they don't enforce it. Walk in those. Sprouts, some of the other like Big Five, Sporting Goods, I don't think they enforced it. One time they tried, but it all depends within where you are and with the people, the manager.
Yeah, exactly. I've been in post offices that haven't enforced it, and I've been in various other, what you would consider to be more official public buildings. I don't want to name them because I don't want to shame them and have them suddenly get in trouble. But by the same token, it's like, as you say, you adapt your behaviour to what suits you best. And if pulling a mask out of your pocket isn't necessarily going to be frowned upon, if you happen to forget, let's just say, then you might find yourself in those stores more. Just by coincidence, right?
Yeah, you don't have to go to those stores. Go to the ones that don't enforce it.
Indeed. As I say, we could moan about it all day long. I just don't see the point personally. Laws aren't going to get changed back like most laws. They just hope they don't go off the docket. They're always on there, right? Even if they're long old, never enforced and laughed about and joked about. Oh yeah, well, why haven't they been scrubbed from history then? Oh, they're still there though, yeah? So they might be enforced. Could be enforced. They're definitely enforceable. But let's have a little chuckle about how they're still there but not enforced, and it seems silly when we don't have horses anymore, or whatever it's about.
Well, this situation is similar to a schoolyard and having the status quo of the schoolyard, and then you come into it, you say, no, I'm not into that, and then the bullies come and say, hey, you better behave because this is our schoolyard. You say, I don't care what your bullies say, I'm not going to behave. And so you have your factions. And I remember that when I was growing up, there was this group who, if they caught you alone, they beat you up. But then this group here would beat them up if they were alone. There was these fights going on. And so I was just independent of both groups. And I remember making friends with a big guy on this one group. And these guys from the other group came at me. And that guy saw me. He says, oh, I'll go help that guy. So this big guy came and helped me out. It was rather interesting. But yeah, I don't like being bullied. I don't bully, but I don't like being bullied.
Yeah, and half the time, if you're not aware of the communications that they're using to communicate this with you, you're unaware of it anyway. And then should you become aware of it because somebody highlights your attention to it, or there's a big sign outside a store that says you've got to do something to use their store, you go, have I? And then you decide, oh, no, I don't think I want to do that. But unless you've been poisoned the whole day with, I don't know, endless reels of reams of news that are going by over and over again, then chances are you're not even going to be aware of it or concern yourself with it, right?
Yeah, I remember I told this story once on the show where this one store, you had to wear it, and I had to get in there and get something for my wife. So I just covered up my mouth and Normally, it's on my chin and no one says anything. And so the young gal says, "Hey, sir, you need to put your mask on fully." And I said, "Well, it's a health issue. I like to breathe, so I can't put it on fully." Well, I go, "I know but I'm not going to do it. I got okay. So you got a health issue? Okay, it's okay. Go on." I mean, it was so silly.
A little dance that they want us to do.
Yeah, if it's so good, it's protecting those who are afraid of it. Don't worry about me, I told her.
No, what's more silly is the football. They're rolling on the floor for 3 hours, tackling each other, probably yelling and spitting at each other. And at the end of the game, they take off the helmets, they put on a mask, and they give an interview 50 feet away from the person giving the interview. It's like, are you kidding me? They're really laughing at us.
I'm with you, Neil. They should just ban all football. You're right.
After yesterday's games, I agree.
What happened yesterday?
Well, my Giants won, and all they needed was Philly to win at night, and Philly laid down.
Oh,
they laid down to the Washington Redskins, not the Washington football team, the Redskins. Sue me.
Go on, Neil.
If you don't understand, Nathan, there's a football team called the Washington Redskins, but it's not right to call them Redskins. So after a team that's been named the Redskins for like 80 years, they had to take away the Redskins and put them down as the Washington football team.
Great name.
It's so stupid.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by somebody who's trying to join during the intro, which is Arwin, and 10th Man, John, Neil, and Sleeping Warrior, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Evening.
Morning, good morning. Enthusiastic Discord, good. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Never in my lifetime.
No, but we can calculate it into existence, and then based on maths, we can then assert that it does exist.
No. Any evidence of the physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
Hey, Arwin, we hear you.
Hey, Owen.
Did we move off that first point, or have we moved? Are we still on the first point?
Well, still on the first point, because you talked about reifying something from mathematics, and I'm asking for something physical.
No, if I calculate it into existence, it exists.
So if I calculate unicorn farts, they exist, do they?
Yeah, of course.
No, they
You've
don't.
calculated it.
No,
they do.
no, that's reification.
Nathan, you can imagine smelling it if you calculate them into existence. You can just imagine it.
Imagining it doesn't mean that I'm actually smelling it or that it actually exists, simply because I've mathematically qualified something.
But remember, George Musa said that we don't have to work at the really is level, Nathan, so we can just imagine these things into existence, and that's totally okay. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
While I appreciate George Musa granting you permission to answer my question at the not really is level, I asked for physical geometric sphere edge horizons. You know, that one that was formerly known as Earth curve, blocking boats and buildings and stuff. So, yeah, your permission isn't going to be sufficient, unfortunately. Sorry, George Musa, giving people permission to not work at the really is level doesn't change what physics, that would be the physical, actually is. And that's what we're asking for in regards to Earth curve edge horizons.
When you break that down and hear it again and again, we don't really need to work at the really is level. What does that tell you of the guy's genuine honesty about his topic?
Yeah, they're not, because they're having to reify mathematics into physicality when that isn't possible. Anyone else got anything to add from Discord on physical Earth curve edges you used to claim were Earth curve blockages? Don't be shy.
It's just an apparent
No, they're
location.
afraid the things that the bottom of boats used to be disappearing because of Earth curve, but we never said that the horizon is Earth curve now.
Yeah, I appreciate that they've now relinquished and denied the fact that they used to claim the horizon was a physical obstruction for boats and buildings into the distance. Not anymore. Clearly, nobody's claiming that, right? And clearly nobody is, because they're not. Listen, anyone want to claim Earth curve edge is demonstratable at the horizon?
Oh, they don't want to claim it, but they'll point at it in a picture and say that it is the curve.
That'd be claiming it. Certainly not doing that here by the looks of things.
No, but they'll not say it. They'll just point in it and say that's the curve. See?
Yeah, they'll point at the horizon and say that's Earth curve. That is actually their rhetoric. That's what they need to claim. The unfortunate truth being that it's been debunked. They can't utilise refraction to move an Earth curve edge with refraction if you can't derive an Earth curve edge by way of a physical horizon anymore. Black Swan. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? Don't all go at once. The claim we have 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth underneath things that aren't attached, so we see them drift away. 15 degrees an hour. Anybody?
Well, the
then we
clouds
would have
are
a
drifting,
Coriolis
as far as I
effect,
can
wouldn't
tell.
we?
Hold on, I won't say again, Rams.
Then we would have a Coriolis effect with things that fly, and but we
Yeah, they
don't
say
see
we've
that.
got Coriolis effect, and we don't. That's things drifting away from you at 15 degrees an hour as Earth rotates underneath them. Your observation of it seeming to curve away or drift away, that's Coriolis. Unfortunately, that would imply that things are drifting away from you as Earth turns underneath them, and that would shorten flight times when travelling west, because Earth would be turning underneath planes. For us to observe them seem to drift from the ground, yes, that's the claim they actually make, that we have Coriolis. But then when you look into definitions of Coriolis, they talk about all sorts of nonsense, like wind and stuff going down drains, which is only Coriolis if you're in that wind spinning around, seeing things not actually drift but seem to as you spin around in a wind or in a drain. So unless you're part of the rotating reference frame, seeing things seem to drift as you turn underneath them, it's not Coriolis. But they convolute it with all sorts of nonsense about winds and drains because they want to convolute what Coriolis actually is. You rotating under things not attached and them seeming to drift. I.e. you on a roundabout looking at a tree that's not attached to your roundabout, seeming to look like it's coming towards you as you spin around, when in reality it's you turning underneath the tree. The tree's not moving, it just seems to. The seems to bit is Coriolis, i.e. not actual deflection. Apparent deviation, however you want to term it. So yeah, the claim they make they have Coriolis is the thing that debunks Earth turn. They say we will see Coriolis because Earth's turning. we don't see Coriolis. Earth isn't turning.
They just got back, but yeah, on that Coriolis, it's funny how they play both sides of the argument, and they're wrong, of course. But they'll say, well, when you shoot a ballistic, a bullet, the Earth is turning underneath the bullet, but it's not turning under anything else. It just has a bias towards just the bullet, I guess.
Because they assume that the force of it can break free from the lockstep motion momentum of the Earth spinning.
I love the way
reason why they say that, I think.
I love the way you emphasize free. I'm free.
Well, it's like most things. They take the thing that debunks their claim. So their claim is that Earth is turning to move the celestial bodies. So it's us moving, not them. And then that would result in Coriolis deflection. So they claim it with very vague examples given out by the high priests. When in reality, the claim that Earth's turning, not the movement of the stars being apparent from us in a stationary position, is to have Coriolis deflection. So the thing that debunks them is the thing that they claim. They make the assertion, and then here at trench level, they debunk the assertion and argue against it with an assumption that Earth's turning anyway. So it's a convoluted gaggle screw of nonsense when it comes to Coriolis effect. And even if you try and attempt to look up the definitions, it'll leave you in confusion for most people's part. So the reality is Coriolis effect is fairly straightforward effect. It's you rotating underneath stuff not attached. You on a roundabout seeing things seem to drift away from you if they're not attached to the roundabout. Well, that's your observation as you turn underneath stuff. So for Earth to have it, you've got to be on a turning Earth, turning with it, and seeing stuff not turn with it to have Coriolis. But that would shorten flight times, because it would mean that Earth's turning underneath planes and drones and helicopters and hot air balloons, and they'd all have Earth turning underneath them. Because that's what they're asserting. Earth turns underneath to give you Coriolis. Well, that shortening of flight times doesn't happen. You don't see drones or hot air balloons having their flight paths interrupted and landing in a completely different state or a completely different country, because Earth's not turning underneath any of them. We'd notice.
Isn't that the same mess they're in with the physical horizon that's not there?
Yeah, and they even insert that one into the controlled op narrative. So they ask us where our edge is. Well, they have Earth curve mathematics that assert that the horizon's a physical edge to block boats and buildings.
Yeah, but they can't see the edge because it is being visually bent through mysterious refraction.
Hold on, let me just correct Darwin. Not mysterious refraction, terrestrial refraction, which utilises an R value. Standard refraction, terrestrial refraction, these things utilise R. They assert there's an arbitrary bending of the light at the rate of the radius, 7/6 of it. Well, if you've got that mandatory value, you need the radius. And the radius is a derivation of the physical horizon. Straight line tangent point with a straight line drawn to it. Well, to move it and bend it means you can't measure it as straight and use it as a tangent. It's the Arwinian paradox. Shout out to James Richards and Trey Clark for the super chats. There wasn't any message attached to Trey's, but there is actually a message, if I can get it up on my smaller screen, attached to James Richards. So I'll just bring up his super chat and actually read it out. Hopefully my babbling has bought me enough time to reload the screen so I can actually see what it says. Have I? No, it's loading. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. I will read it out.
I can read it out for you.
I've just got there. Globies have zero scientific evidence of a spinning ball. They do have a lot of stories. Let's ignore the lack of science and talk about the stories. Indeed, very well said, James Richard.
Hey, Nathan, isn't it interesting that we've covered two of the housekeeping questions in the last two statements? Now, what's the third one? The gas pressure without a container. And what do? They do the same thing there. They come in with a container full of gas and then try to show us how you can have gas pressure without a container. And
also, part of the the narrative that they require to have gas pressure is containment. So what do? They put it on their opponent to prove the container. It's like, we must have containment, we've got gas pressure. But they are challenging us as flat earthers to show them the dome. Automatically, when you demonstrate that space is fake, they will ask you, well, where's the container? Like, I don't know. I just know that to have gas pressure, there must be containment. I don't know what the sky is. We've been lied to about it. But the fact that it's a vacuum in your narrative is easy to debunk. And what's your reply automatically? Where's the dome?
It's very easy. You walk outside, you point up and say, it's over there. And it's true.
Indeed.
Well, that it's like you said, it's easy to debunk because they'll sit there and say, yeah, the only way to have gas pressure is with containment. Okay, I'm glad we all agree. And then they'll say, well, where's the container? Well, it doesn't matter at this point because the antecedent is a container. You just agreed we can't have this gas pressure without one. So who cares?
Yeah, but 10th man, if you go outside and point at the sky, say it's over there, you are technically correct.
You are technically correct, but they want you to fall into the bear trap of asserting what the sky is. Well, the sky is a container. So you're saying that blue stuff is a like a sapphire dome then, and then on you go with their straw man.
Could be if you fall for that. If you're going to get material specific about it. Because if you're going to claim some kind of material for the container, then automatically the question arises, so what is outside of the container then? And then it becomes a convoluted clusterfuck of, potentially maybe it's like a domed disk in outer space after all, or something like that, you know?
Well, reminds me of a conversation I had with somebody.
There goes my suitable for all tick in the YouTube algorithm.
What's that?
I'm just muttering about how I'll now have to disclaim that swearing.
Okay. Yeah, this reminds me of a conversation I had just on this very subject. And I said, well, hang on. Before we get into it, do you believe we're in an open or closed system? You know, that was a good one, because if they say open, well, then you got a sky vacuum next to air, and that don't work. And if he says closed, well, it involves a container we can't see, but it's closed. So either way, that's a good comeback.
Nah, but they can still reify gas having weight, though, and then they just imagine how that weight is going to prevent.
Okay, that's fine.
Or it's going to slow down. It's going to have
that's fine, Arvin.
Speed until it slows down at some point, as proclaimed.
That's fine. How do you weigh gas, Arvin?
You put it into a container, and then you put that container on a scale.
Thank you very much.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
More of their nonsense, just pictures in school books.
We get a hello out of Adam. Hey, Adam.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll go with a no, and good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Sir Adam from Nottingham.
Maybe you can help us out with the next question. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Easy one, that one.
Nope. Nah. It's a reification fallacy. Oh, by the way, concerning the subject of gravity, or related to it, and relative density, remember that time I brought up about the helium balloon, what it would do in the vomit comet and all that? Remember that time? Had a discussion about it?
Yeah, it's only a couple of weeks ago, I do remember.
Right, so somebody, a Stone Monkey 3D, actually found a video where they did have helium balloons inside of the vomit comet. And it shows as it is at supposed 0G situation, and when it's normal, when it's back to normal, both. And it turns out I was completely wrong. So I have that video. I posted it in the Ballbusters yesterday. I don't know how to present here, by the way. How does that work?
Yeah, I don't want to present it because it's not mine, but you'll have to describe it verbally. Which way did the balloon go when they were doing the parabolic maneuver?
It actually free-floated. It actually was totally unexpected. So people were free-floating things, objects, solid objects were free-floating, but so were the helium balloons. So that was kind of surprising.
Oh, okay. So in the sealed container, they achieved neutral buoyancy. They were not moving up or down as they were descending. That's interesting.
Right. And then when they were going level again, then the balloons would immediately pull up. So they were definitely filled with helium or a lighter than regular air gas. So that was very surprising, and had me a little puzzled. But I've been trying to think about how does that work? how can it work? And then basically cross-referencing it with the accelerating car with the helium balloon, where the balloon goes forward when you accelerate. Well, maybe then if it accelerates downwards, that the balloon goes down because of that in the same fashion. And if the downwards acceleration is at a certain rate, then it will literally free float. It's a little, yeah, it was surprising. I didn't expect that. There's some work to be done to figure that out. How does the normal relative density workings in a Euclidean non-motion, non-accelerating situation, how does that work in relation to when an object is moving and has a medium within it? Because it is different. It works different.
Wasn't one of the comments on the vomit comet that as it was going down to create the zero-G effect, that everything was going down at the same speed as the airplane, so that's why people were floating? Am I right on that?
Yes, they claim zero-G, but yeah, balloons would, yeah, they also basically become neutralized. But the only explanation that remains is the similar explanation as in the accelerating car, and that is that the air within the plane is also redistributed, and just as Brian would say it, the support actually shifts, so it goes down as much as it would go up.
Well, that's where I was going next. Is the balloon is a material, inside is the helium gas. So if someone was to pop a balloon while it was going down, what would the gas do?
It would go in all directions.
Thank you.
I'm going to just ask Adam something. Is this merely an interesting folly, though, given that the behaviour of a contained lighter than air gas inside a contained air in free fall by way of a parabolic manoeuvre isn't really that useful to us, generally speaking?
Yeah, I'd agree. It's more a curiosity point as to, I think, what Kem sums it up. If you take the balloon away, we all know what the gas behaviour is going to do, so that's fine. I'm more curious. I've got the two pictures, look. So that's, I won't play it, Nathan, but that's it during zero-G mode. And then this is it when they return back. You can see the balloons taut on the string. Odd look, because they are a little all over the place. Some are on the ground. Look, there's nothing uniform. It's not like there's a direct force that's been applied or has been removed, because they're not. It's not one on the floor or all of them on the floor. Look, some are in some positions, some are in others. It's very random where they are. Look.
Adam, as you've got it,
I posted the link in the chat, by the way.
It's on screen,
for people.
Adam, can you, from where you are or where you were, because if you go back to where you were, maybe a few seconds further, there's somebody. Oh no, there's somebody that's fine where you are. Somebody on the roof of this, whatever it is, 747. So if you can play maybe 5 seconds of it, well, I'll get away with that. Just so we can see the behaviour for maybe 5 seconds. Whoever's talking, just 1 second.
Yeah, look, so you see they're in.
That'll do. Stop.
Yeah, so he's
good enough.
Floating up there, and then there we go. You can see when they come out of it. The guys now look sliding down the wall, and if I press for another few seconds, you'll just see the balloons go up. So they return back, look, when it comes out of the.
Okay, so when it levels out, they're, as per you'd expect, they rise up to the bottom to the top of the fuselage. Whereas when they're in free fall, it seems like they just bob around like the people bob around.
Well, they're all. See, what's odd, look, is they're all at different heights. They've all got different levels of tension in the string. So whether that's just different rates of inflation, but I mean, this one's on the ground, look.
So
everyone watching, I just want to make
the different temperatures then, pressures then.
No, it's relative density, isn't it? You're seeing relative density differentials between the different sizes, volumes, densities of the balloons relative to the medium that they're in, right?
No, because there's a parabolic manoeuvre akin to free fall that's taking place as well. So no, I just see this as a folly. It's interesting to talk about, but A container within a container in free fall. That's what we're looking at.
Which is all, anyway, nothing that gravity's claimed to be.
You mentioned gravity.
If I may, it's not a proof against relative density, because relative density theory is anchored purely in a stationary Euclidean setting. So if the whole thing is moving, then whatever is moving within it, that is not really accounted for by the relative density theory. Only if it moves along the axis in accordance to its density, not what happens within the thing that is moving.
Well, I would still say that it still proves relative density. Same as a car. The gas is just moving to the back. That's why the helium moves forward. It's just displacing it in a different direction.
It's not directly explained by relative density, but again, it falls outside of relative density because it is in motion.
Exactly.
Yeah, if this is being touted as an equivalence to relative density or a debunk of relative density, that would be a false equivalence, because the thing falling out the sky in no way is a representation of relative density if everything's falling at the same rate.
I'm with Flatzoid.
I'm with Arwin.
Excellent.
Well,
the original assertion? I missed the original assertion.
It's not. It's just a folly. It's just interesting. We were discussing what a balloon might do, and now we can see it. It's just interesting. It's not particularly proving or disproving anything.
Play it again, Meekin.
Don't know. I don't want him to.
No, you'll have to do it. It's in Ballbusters chat, just below your last post.
Okay.
3 up.
Anyway, just so we're back to a relevant point that's even slightly related, any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container, given that we're looking at a container of the balloon in free fall inside a fuselage of a 737 moving through the air with air in it. Any evidence that any of that could be achieved if the sky was a vacuum?
Yes, the gas in the balloon in a enclosed container moving down at an accelerated rate within the container of the Earth realm proves gas pressure without a container.
What Arwin's just done is just taken that folly and somehow spun it into an answer to this question.
I do best.
You're getting better, and you're going to have to rename yourself. I've noticed since just before Christmas, you've started to become a very good ball win. And you're starting to enjoy it, I think, Arwin.
But would you say that to have gas pressure it requires volume?
Yeah, volume being the amount of space inside your container.
Okay, so there's your answer.
Right, but the volume can also be limited by weight, right? So the container can be weight.
I see what you did there.
At the edges of the volume that prevent it from continuing on, and that causes the gas pressure within the weight outlined volume.
Yeah,
right?
of the container, Arwin. I saw what you did straight away. So now we're talking about the container and its volume and weight. That's interesting. Why are we weighing and qualifying the containment and its weight when it's merely the volume of gas occupiable space that the gas can fill? That's what we're talking about in terms of the volume, not the weight of the container you might construct, and maybe a difference that you'll give the gas inside it when you're weighing it, so that you can attribute a downward vector to it, even though inside the container, regardless of what it's made of and how much it weighs, the gas is expanding freely in all directions.
Right, but you can't have a container that has no weight.
So what? Who cares? We're talking about the containment, not the container. Containment. That's the... Oh, just spotted what you've done, and it's really clever, and I'm glad you've done it. So we were talking about the dome. We're challenged to provide the dome, right? That's the container. And what we are arguing about isn't the container. And Arwin's talking about how it's qualifiable once you manufacture it and weigh it, or even weigh it with a gas if you extended out his argument. But we're not talking about the container. We're talking about the containment. The V is the volume, the amount of space inside the container. That qualifier excludes all other aspects of the container. Forget how much the container weighs or whether you can weigh it. The volume inside it is all that's relevant to how much space the gas can fill. Now, you need a container to do that. What the container is irrelevant, as long as it actually provides containment. So we're talking about containment. the fact that you require it, and therefore they immediately challenge us to tell us what the container is. Now, how the hell would we know? There's a massive deception about what the sky is. We're not going to know what it is. There's a massive lie about it. So why would it suddenly imply that we know, just because we know that we require containment? Doesn't mean I know what the container is, and that's all they challenge you on. It's like, no, we're going to ask you how you can have the gas pressure without any containment.
Well, Nathan, if Cavendish could weigh the Earth with his experiment, then maybe we could devise of an experiment to weigh the dome.
What the hell? That's fascinating. But no, on both counts. No, Cavendish couldn't weigh the Earth, and no, we couldn't weigh some container that you arbitrarily assigned when we have no idea what the sky is. We just know that we must have containment, otherwise we'd all be dead.
But don't you think it's really fascinating that to have volume, everything has to be physical, and to have physical, it needs containment of some sort?
Yeah, those are the rules. Can't have it any other way, unfortunately. Unfortunately, the other way, their assertion, sky is a vacuum called outer space, that's impossible. Because the gas we breathe would fill the space.
Well, we're back to open and closed systems, so obviously we're closed.
Yeah, we must have containment.
It's a sky valve, 10th.
The sky valve? Like a pressure cooker?
No, like Mega May gets access.
It just opens for the astronauts to leave, that's all. Then closes again.
Oh, they know where the hatch is.
Yes, the Earth realm is a spaceship, and there is a special hatch to the other compartment outside.
Somebody like David Icke.
Mega Maid opens it, doesn't she?
Have you been watching David Icke or something?
What does he have? I offered that idea like a half a year ago.
You tell him, take it up with your lawyers.
Remember? Valve Earth.
Yeah, Arwen hatched that idea a year ago.
Look, I'm telling you now, his nonsense goes way back further than yours does.
Well, I don't know. I kind of lost track when he started to claim the moon was actually a space station.
That's what I was referring to.
Wait a minute. You mean it's
that's
not
Obi-Wan Kenobi?
No, that's David.
Yeah, I saw that in the second Independence Day. It was a space station. You mean it's not the way the movies show it?
That sounds absolutely awesome on a good stereo. when that comes over the moon. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Maybe they can devise a scientific theory to weigh the dome.
Whoa. What scientific theory? You first need a hypothesis for that.
That's what I'm asking for.
No, actually, you just need a computer with some iTunes and a little snack by the side to eat.
Email. It's all about the email.
Is it the email?
Oh, these are Dr. Becky references every time.
Can't help it. Science at work, man.
I've never even watched this woman. So, from memory, this is going back at least a year. You said that after one of her videos talking about science, she then said that she was doing science when she sat at her desktop. Is that correct? Is that where this all spans?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
She thought that doing her stuff on her computers and checking email, that was science. And she literally stated it proudly.
Hold on.
It was kind of a...
Yeah, well, she
kind of a... Well, go on.
No, so the things she states is always contradicting one another, so I wouldn't take anything she says with a pinch of salt.
It was one of those videos where it was a day in the life of an astrophysicist. So she's doing different things, and then she said, okay, I'm going to go back to the office and do some science. She's showing how she does science. That's exactly what Arwen explained right there.
Indeed.
Any evidence of the R value? Earth radius.
Black Swan.
At best, we've disproven the radius.
Would you not need a physical geometric shape for the radius?
You would. You'd need a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve, to derive a geometric tangent point, that would be the physical edge of their Earth that formerly blocked boats and buildings, with a straight line to it to derive that R value. Unfortunately, they're telling us we wouldn't expect to see the geometric horizon. Nobody's claiming the horizon's Earth curve.
And it's a definite no.
One or the other. Arwin,
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead, Arwin.
The math claims it is.
Yeah, that's from Rumpus. The geometric horizon only exists in the maths. Yeah, that means it's not your world. It only exists in the maths.
Okay,
Right, so the only thing left to do to get your Earth curvature real again is to reify mathematics into reality.
You can't.
And you got your globe.
You can't, because their maths derives the R value from a physical horizon. So you can't. That's the end of it. That's the end of the globe. It died 1st Jan 2020.
I want to challenge the math. Black Swan destroyed it. So if Rumpus was on the show, I'd say to him right now, Rumpus, if you're right, then at 3959 radius, the current model of the sphere you say we live on, that horizon has to be at 1.22 miles, but it's not. But guess what? It's definitely over 10 miles, but we'll just give it a 10-mile value in the Black Swan picture. And at the 10-mile, it would have to be 264,000-mile radius, which would make it bigger than Jupiter, almost as big as the sun. Well, since that's not the case either, guess what? We don't live on a sphere.
How do you know how big Jupiter is, though?
Well, that's a reification, too.
No. They use R.
Based on assumption of R somewhere else?
Yeah, they take Venus to be the same size as Earth, apply Kepler's third law. That's how you get everything, the whole lot, all of the distances, everything.
Well,
so are you saying, hang on, Arwen. So are you saying, Nathan, that if the Earth, which of course it's not, but just have fun here, then Jupiter's radius would be a lot bigger since the Earth is 264 now?
Well, I mean, yeah, you can insert any value you like into those maths. Just scales up if you increase those values. So yeah, it would make Jupiter bigger and further.
So if the Earth was 264,000 mile in radius, then Jupiter's radius would be bigger and the distances would be far greater than what they currently say they are based on the 3959, correct?
You can hypothetically do this, but this was my objection originally to the Black Swan argument when it was presented before it was developed by Ben in his argument with that same image or the same video reel. So he's saying if you increase the size of Earth to match up with where this horizon puts an Earth curve edge, then it puts the circumference of Earth beyond the presupposed orbital path of the Moon in the standard heliocentric model. In other words, your equator would be out where they say the Moon orbits. Massive, 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 massive Earth. Well, obviously that's ludicrous. You can't have that. It doesn't, number one, you don't just change the size of physical rocks. They are metaphorically or otherwise set in stone. But to hypothetically do it in this example is to miss the point. You can't go beyond a certain physical point if you've got a hill in the way. And they assert that there's a hill in the way. That's the Earth curve edge obstruction. It's falling away from you. And beyond it you can't see because it's a hill in the way. That's what their horizon is. You're seeing the top edge of it. Well, as soon as you start moving that physical parameter, you've debunked the geometry of Earth as a sphere. So there's no point in then speculating about, well, how big would it be if the physicality of Earth could change on a given day? It's like, no, the real world scenario here is physical things don't move. You know, once they reach the parameters that they are in terms of a physical point, like a hill, it doesn't go suddenly beyond that. Suddenly doesn't expose all the things behind the hill and put itself in a position behind things that are formerly behind it, in front of it. It just doesn't work like that. You can't have physical things doing that. So to draw this comparison, as much as it's like the original part of the story for the Black Swan, if you want to document its timeline, it starts off with Ben pointing out what you're pointing out. But when that was put to me, I'm like, I really don't like this because who cares?
Yeah, but I think Ben and I are doing it in a fun way, kind of like locking him into the absurdity of it all.
And that's all well and good, but meanwhile, we don't have a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon. And that's the end of the globe.
Correct.
That's the end of the globe, though.
Right. And then after that, we want to have some fun with them.
Yeah, it's not like you can go and stick a flag in it.
No, but if it was a physical hill obstructing your view, then you could. I.e., if it were on a sphere, we would have physical sphere-edge horizons blocking our view with a qualifiable feet inches value. But their maths doesn't have that in any sort of realistic way because it excludes all aspects of perspective. Your target doesn't change in its size with distance. Now, actual sizes don't change regardless of distance, but the angular size does. And their maths has taken that angular size reduction and called it Earth curvature. When you put things into side view and suddenly photographs are compared to images that have the side of your own head in them, because that's how photos are. Well, no, you don't take pictures that include the side of your own head and have a 90-degree aspect onto where you see. That's merely done to remove all aspects of perspective, so then they can assert when angular limitations reach and breach the point at the horizon. That's actually a physical Earth curve hill in the way. Well, it's not. We've debunked that. That's what the black swan does. So for me, it's like, well, let's just focus on that, given that hardly any of them on the globe side are either capable mentally or willing mentally to accept and understand this fact. You can't have a sphere beyond a certain limitation. And once you've debunked that, focus on that.
Yeah, I guess where I'm going with this is, remember the show Mitchell from Australia did? Was that Dr. Tony he did it with, or Mr. Sensible, where he said, at best? Who was that one?
That's Mr. Sensible.
Okay, so Mr. Sensible said, at best, you've disproven the radius of the Earth. Aha, now we're going to have some fun. So it's 264,000 miles, the radius. So would that change flight times and everything? It's a laughter track. It's so funny. It's so stupid.
It's amazing that they don't understand velocity would change with altitude.
However, the reason for the modus tollens argument's construction is because when we pointed out that it's not reasonable or logical to beg the question, assume the outcome, the thing you're trying to prove, and we debunked the assumption by way of pointing out the presupposition, they just assume R in every instance. They're like, well, it's perfectly acceptable to assume R because we already know we're on a sphere. Blatant zealotry for any other subject, but in terms of the heliocentric Western worldview, that religion is ingrained in every man in the Western world, man being man, woman and child, and therefore they will assert it as real regardless of it being pointed out as a logical fallacy to beg the question. So we had to, or QE more accurately speaking, had to develop an argument that started with the presupposition because they're saying it's justifiable to beg the question. So it starts out with the assumption that we're on a sphere with the radius that they give us. And according to them, if we're on a sphere, that is set figuratively, I say because we're not on a sphere, in stone. You know, sphere-shaped stones don't change. And once you're beyond the parameters of that sphere-shaped stone, it can't be physically blocking things. It's not a physical horizon anymore. And once you assert that it's non-physical, then you can't derive an R value, which is where their origins begin. With Al-Biruni deriving physical horizons into R values for sphere-shaped Earth. All dead. It's all gone. Globe's dead. And,
indeed.
And nothing to do but cry about it if you're on the globe side.
And they are crying.
I think they're pulling the air out the little bit that they got left.
Well, that will reveal a sphere-shaped head.
An actual sphere shape?
Just the top part. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to beg R and say we're on a sphere with a radius, and you've given the numbers, and they have 3959, then it's over because the horizon can't be any further than 1.22 miles of the 1 foot observer height. That's a brilliant argument, brilliant modus tollens. It's DOA, dead on arrival. Any argument against it?
Yeah, I mean, let's say you buy a product from someone and they given the actual size for that product, and you buy it and you see it's not, and they say it's fact that's that size, and you buy it and it's not that size, you're going to tell them they're lying, aren't you?
For sure.
Yeah, so why would you accept it if your globe has been said this is the actual radius and it's been disproven? Why are you still going to fight tooth and nail and say it is the radius?
For some reason, Flatsoid, they don't want to give it up.
When you say that, it's because that is the very essence of their religious worldview. So when you say they don't want to give it up, it's like, well, that's to give it up is to relinquish your belief in a sphere Earth, and that is like I say, the very essence of their worldview. So yeah, you're going to find that reluctance. That's not surprising. Doesn't matter.
Well,
It doesn't
let
change
me
the
ask-
argument. It doesn't change that when they come here to defend it, they end up telling us just how non-physical the horizon is. In spite of all the maths that used to claim it was physical and blocking stuff and how much it was blocking it by feet and inches values that don't include perspective. So that's all gone by the wayside now, while they simultaneously deny their physical claim of a horizon that's Earth curve.
Well, let me bring something else to that. Why do former globe religious believers, why did they give it up then? Let's answer it that way. Why are some people on this panel who believe that gave it up? Like John. John says he's an ex-glober. Why did he give it up? What was more important to John?
Well, I needed R to justify, the dip angle measurement to the horizon. If it's refracted, it's not a dip angle measurement. It's a paradox, like Darwin said. You can't do that.
Okay, but why did you give it up?
Well, my mind wouldn't accept it anymore. They're just got too fallacious. Like, making stories up about Santa, you're eventually going to say, well, that's just bull crap.
So you gave it up because truth won at the end.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, it's good. Being honest with yourself is how we all got here.
But back to the extension of the joke when it comes to the bigger radius value, that sort of backs up why I'm saying you focus on the fact that they require R. Everything to do with the heliocentric model starts, ends, begins and dies with the R value. So once you have an argument like Modus Tollens with the black swan and the imagery that shows it's beyond the physical capabilities of a sphere based on their physical geometric capabilities laid down in their maths, then why bother saying, well, if that was the case, then you knew radius... No. They need R as it stands, and that's the end of the argument. So as far as I'm concerned, it's like joking aside. No, that is where it ends.
Yeah, you can't refract the horizon. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, you can't loom the horizon. You can't move the horizon with respect to the horizon. We only have one horizon. And the horizon in the globe Earth maths is geometric. It's marked with an X labelled horizon and debunked by the black swan. And what are we told when we present the black swan and the argument that goes with it? Well, we're told that nobody claims the Earth curve edge is horizons. Who would claim such a thing? That's what globers tell us. That's the power of the black swan argument. Forced attrition. Suddenly they're in a position to relinquish their own religion because that's the only way to go. That's the only place to go after you've had the argument presented. Because logically, if you're going to move the horizon, you're going to have to declare that it's non-physical. And that's what you're claiming Earth is. A horizon that's physical, blocking boats and buildings. That's what you need. So that's forced attrition.
That's an excellent name for a band. I was going to say, Nathan, Forced Attrition and Arwen's Paradox. Excellent name for bands.
Sounds like a great playlist. On the bill tonight, we've got Arwen's Paradox and Forced Attrition. Warming up for John Bon Jovi.
Excellent.
So boats don't go behind a curve anymore?
Can't block a boat with a non-physical horizon. And we're being told how non-physical it is, even though it's marked with an X, labelled horizon, and physical in the globe Earth reification that is the heliocentric model. So no, they haven't got an Earth curve edge anymore. We don't have Earth curve.
They're hiding behind your resolution limit.
Yeah. And when they take the mickey out of us, they say we're behind the curve. Well, behind the curve of what? The Earth? The horizon we've debunked? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're behind the curve when it comes to reification of Earth curve edges that are horizons. Because we don't have any. And your entire model and religious belief in living on a sphere is based on that fact we've debunked. Earth curve edges aren't represented at the horizon. We've debunked it.
They contradict themselves every time, because every time they need to do a celestial navigation from the ocean or anywhere, actually, they have to have a tangent plane straight. And then when they have to build buildings, they need a plane straight to get their 90-degree right. So every time they need something to work, they have to admit that everything is straight, because they never say, I'm going to do a navigation based on this arc. Because there should be an arc if you're on a sphere, or you're building a building. Okay, we're building on an arc, so let's put that into. They never do it. They just say everything is straight, and guess what? It works out perfect every time.
Yeah, in other words, Earth's measured flat. If you're building anything and doing anything that might actually have people's lives depending on you getting it correct, it's always measured as a plane. Earth is a plane. It's as simple as that. It's measured as a plane. It's obviously and observably flat.
Yep. That's how when geodesic surveys come and say, oh, the measured curve, I laugh at their faces. Because they take plane surveying and then they just put geodetic consideration into it.
Hey, Nathan, somebody in chat pointed out that Live 2020 is no longer a correct title for the show.
Oh, have I accidentally left on 2020 on the title? I'll correct that for tomorrow.
You've bent time. Broken time, Nathan.
Completely arbitrary anyway, who cares?
Yeah, that's evidence for Lorentz contraction. We've contracted time, so it actually still is 2020, but it might not be, but you can think of it that way.
I'll change it on April 1st.
Oh, you just debunked Einstein.
Very good one.
You just debunked Einstein, Nathan.
No, the only thing it debunks is that the experience of time is linear. His experience hadn't caught up yet.
Trying to say, Arwen's on fire today. Basically, that was a little slant. That was Arwen saying I'm slow. That was really subtle. I
think Arwen's releasing a little bit of his 6 million fee to the ballers that he wants to help them. He's just releasing little bits here for them to see the value.
I believe no one's going to give you credit for that, Arwen, but I give you mucho props for that. That was the most subtle dig you could ever have. It was epic. There was Arwen calling me slow, but the way he described it was beautiful. You have to listen back to how Arwen just said that. That was a subtle jab between the ribs, but in a funny way. That's why I say in the chat. I just want to say this.
That's the word touche.
I just want to say that's why in the chat when you see me writing Arwen is ace, that's why I say it, right? Make no mistake, Arwen is ace.
Oh, and PJ says I'm a Dutch agent now.
Of course you are.
Well, in South Africa, we got racist lightning now.
I am Dutch, and I have an agenda. But yeah, my agenda is to be open and honest and communicative and teach everybody and make sure that as much people wake up from the lies as possible. So that is my agenda. That makes me a Dutch agent, indeed.
So the R1 agenda.
So Flatzoid, because you have racist lightning, is there a lot of charges being filed in court?
It's quite electrifying.
Shocking.
Oh, and now PJ says that my avatar with the tree, it's actually a representation of the Aristarchus tree. I should have known.
How dare you, Owen?
Well, he does go out on a limb a lot. Arwen, that is.
He's breaking a few branches.
Well, it's an ebony tree, and I chose that type of tree because ebony trees are extremely hard and very slow growing. It's considered a hardwood, and that's how I approach myself metaphorically. I'm a slow grower, but I'm tough. Like, once it's developed, it's very tough to bend or break, and that's why I chose the icon.
There you go. Bonsai Arwen.
What?
Your Japanese equivalent. Bonsai Arwen.
No, bonsai trees are not that slow growing, and you have to trim them constantly. Bonsai trees are not hardwood. Hardwood is actually really slow growing.
It gets so technical when I was taking you to an Oriental Arwen.
Yes, and you know how I always try to break jokes, especially yours, by taking it literal. That's my specialization.
Tenth, I think you should change your icon to stones or rocks.
Yeah, how come?
Because you might be the rocks with cousins. Cousins with the rocks.
Cousins of the rocks.
Now just take a photograph of a pebble with a piece of text, "My cousin rocks."
Oh, Michelle Thaler, thank you.
Somebody from Discord save us from this.
Well, but yeah, where's Virus? I heard something happened with Virus. I had to leave that day, but I missed it.
He got injected.
He's in chat. He's been in chat for a while.
So, Virus, what did I miss the other day where everybody commented? I haven't even heard the show or heard why everyone's commenting about your brilliance again.
Not in live stream. Sinclair, go ahead.
Come on.
You want to add something? Go ahead, Sinclair.
Oh no, he was that day you guys got into it for a bit. He was on for a couple hours after. I think he was having a good time. He riled up everybody up.
Okay. I don't know if we're going to get any more info than that, I'm afraid, 10th man.
Well, I just don't know. He's never riled me up. He just contradicts himself every time. He takes two positions on the same argument and then thinks he's got something. He doesn't even know what Coriolis is, Earth-based Coriolis. He thinks you can have infinite reference frames.
Yeah, but 10th, remember, he's got that whole attitude of, I don't care kind of thing, you know.
I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
Well, he thought he had a gotcha with the, I think he was asserting that the quantification of an effect has, you know, something to do with the effect itself by asking Nathan about, you know, the units of entropy.
Yeah, that's right. So he asked me about the qualifying units for entropy, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. How does that change the argument in terms of gas filling and availability of volume? Does it make a difference if I qualify it with a number? The answer is no.
No, absolutely not. It's, what is it? I think it's joules over Kelvin. I'll have to go look for sure, but I don't see how that matters.
It doesn't.
I remember the local college giving 3 units for science class. Would that qualify for entropy?
No, not marks. Not modules, no.
Oh, sorry.
Units.
I was going
like
academic.
milliliters or whatever.
I got 3 units because of an entropy class. Yeah, I got
Maybe Adam will know just before we round out the live show. There still? There, Adam. Clearly not.
But I've realized when you try to talk about the gas of full available space and entropy, then they're just trying to make you try to obfuscate and put it to the units instead of trying to get to the point that the gas will fill the space. So they're trying to push to the units.
Isn't unit a conception?
Yeah, it's just a way of measuring. It's just a disorder. That's all. But they don't have... But that's what I say. They're just trying to obfuscate from the fact that the gas will fill the space.
What was that word you said before disorder?
It's qualitative versus quantitative. So if you've figured out how much something happens, it's like, okay, yeah, but my point is that thing happens, not how much or at what rate or how much. Qualifying it with a number is irrelevant. In this example, we're talking about the free expansion of gas into an availability of space, a volume. Well, that occurrence, whether you qualify it with a number or not, is the thing that's debunking space. So who cares? It makes absolutely no difference. Gas expands to fill a space. And if the sky was a vacuum, what do they call that sky vacuum? Oh, they call it space, don't they? Yeah, well, if it was a space, gas would fill it. And we wouldn't have any gas. That vast space they say the sky vacuum is would be an availability of volume for gas. What's that you say? How much, at what number, arbitrarily assigned to it, would that happen at? Who cares? It's going to happen if the sky was a vacuum, so we'd all be dead. How quickly would we be dead if the sky was a vacuum? And at what number and rate? Who cares? We'd be dead if the sky was a vacuum. It isn't.
Nathan, it's like if I shoot you in the head, how quickly would you die?
Yeah, exactly. So we can talk about that. Well, how quick would the entropy increase occur?
About
who cares?
About 2.5 units.
Yeah, exactly. 15 schreibles per hour. That's how much. Does it matter?
I only asked because it sounded like another good name for a band.
What, 2.5 units?
No, he said something disorder. Progressive disorder? I thought he said it. So that's another good name for a band.
Aggressive disorder?
they have violins in the band, in that band.
Fair enough. With that, I'll say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Sounds like you're in the belly of a ship, and I'm hearing water sounds in the background.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was traveling.
Oh, okay. It sounded like you were in a boat.
Speaking of which, I got to go. It's nice talking to you guys.
Take care, John.
Yeah, John.
Later.
Oh, well, that was a fun Monday show.
Yeah.
Well, I just spotted something weird in the video of the helium balloon in the vomit comet. On the wall, there is like some kind of papers taped to it, and there's the word ether on there.
Oh.
A balloon, a blue balloon with the white letters ether in it. That's weird.
Hey, take a screenshot of that and stick it in Master B.
Yeah.
It's the video, so it's every frame of it. It's in there.
Yeah, just take a screenshot.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I want to see it. That's.
I'll
Do what
show. Sorry, I got.
It's okay. We were
What
seeing
was the question you were going to ask Adam?
what are the qualifying units for entropy? That's what I was asked, and I said I didn't know, and it didn't matter. Like quantitative versus qualitative. If the gas expands into the vacuum, which it does, who cares at what unit qualifies it? It doesn't matter, right? But I don't know the answer, so I thought I might as well ask.
I was listening to that. Was it last night it was on? The replay, because I think I had to disappear when it was on. So I didn't hear it live, but I was listening to it, and I agree with you. I'm not sure what relevance the units has in relation to the behaviour. If you can, I mean, the units are joules per Kelvin, because it's an expression of rate of energy in terms of temperature. So when you're talking like thermodynamic energy, then you're looking at it in terms of how much is stored in there based on its, because at zero, it's zero, you see. So with the equation, you use the Kelvin scale to tell you how much energy's in there, and that's expressed as entropy, or S, isn't it? But joules breaks down even further, doesn't it? So I don't really see what its point, because the units would help you describe and quantify the energy in the system if you wanted it for whatever reason, but that's not going to contradict that. That's still going to follow gas law based on that, isn't it? So I don't.
Now I know that. Now I know what it is. I think I know where their argument, or because I think he's got this from Rumpus. So they qualify it at each end of the extreme. So they demand that we accept that we are describing any gas we use an example as an ideal gas, and therefore it's got infinite kinetic energy. Or they take it to the other extreme and say, in my example, things would very much behave like they'd reached absolute zero, stopped, because then they need to come back down, go boom boom. So they use an example in both extremes as justification for their violation of entropy.
But they're trying to say that, yeah, either end doesn't exist or can't exist, which is true. So therefore none of it's true. That's
no, in the case of going down to 0 Kelvin or absolute zero, they would assert that the gas is very akin to the behaviour at absolute zero, i.e. can stop. So when you've got gas expanding in all directions, right, it's very useful to equivocate it with a bouncy ball and then say, well, it's very much like that if you got down to absolute zero, and then you introduce your reification of a sky vacuum and say, well, it does reach that state and therefore behaves like bouncy balls. Because they're not suddenly going to suffer the elastic collisions and they're not expanding freely into a vacuum anymore because they've almost reached absolute zero and they're very much going to behave like they had reached absolute zero. That's the argument Rumpus put forth. I thought you were here when he did that, actually. Maybe you weren't.
I think I'd, like I said, joined in after nip off like I just did there, but not very. It's not attacking the argument, is it? It's picking it.
But it's glorified ad hom. It's actually a glorified ad hominem attack at that point. It's like, well, do you know the qualifying numbers that we assign, joules per Kelvin in this example? It's like, no. Does it change my argument? No. But let's focus on that. Well, then it becomes an ad hominem attack, right? Let's test your... He even said it at one stage. Well, let's test your knowledge of entropy. It's like, okay, I'm not claiming to be an entropy expert. I do understand the principles that we've demonstrated multiple times here, free expansion into a vacuum being one of them. You know, but having listened to endless hours of MIT lectures, and I've got to admit I was bored through the majority of them. Does that mean suddenly I'm an entropy expert, even though I've sat through hours and hours and hours of lectures on it? No, far from it. Do I know the very bare bones basics that debunk the claim that we've got a sky vacuum? Yeah, I do. Have I cherry-picked that information? Yeah, because it's all I need. Is it suddenly going to be to my detriment that I don't know it's joules per Kelvin? No. Have I heard that said? Yeah. Did it register that that's the qualifying unit that's going to describe the free expansion into a vacuum? No. Does it change the argument? No. So who cares? But when you're arguing with somebody that's essentially putting forward an ad hominem attack, I'm just going to test your knowledge in this regard. I've picked up a tidbit that I don't think you know about in this regard, therefore falsifying your argument? No, just an ad hominem fallacy.
Oh, by the way, I posted the picture you asked for.
Okay, I'll stick that up. Thank you, Arwin.
Nathan, isn't that a tactic or strategy from an opponent on any argument to dive into some information that's not necessary for the actual argument itself, and then get you to kind of say, well, I don't know that number, and then, aha, got you moment for them, but it's not.
Yeah, an ad hominem attack. So if you don't know this particular qualifying unit, that means your argument's void. Well, no, it doesn't. I've got it up on screen if anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah, I hate it when they do that.
Hey, Quantum Eraser.
It works out really good, actually, because we, like a lot of, after the show and the after show, they bring up these arguments, and then they'll say, I'm not really sure what the qualifying unit is. Why don't you go to Nathan Oakley and bring it up? You know, why don't you go to the live show? Why just sit here in the after show for the next 20 hours and pretend you're cloaked? You know, and that's what the Kuma virus did, and that's kind of what I think is really great about how the after show works. They get overly confident that somehow they think they got a slam dunk that's going to silence flat Earth, and then they get destroyed for the internet to see.
Yeah, all they're really fighting for is the scraps of pain relief that they might find in some mere tidbit They think they've got an individual over a barrel on. Like, all right, so what? If you defeat me in any argument, it doesn't matter what argument, somehow that relinquishes the Black Swan argument, for example? No. What about Sky Vacuum being true if you defeat me personally or show that I'm a bad person, for example? No, that won't make any difference either.
Virus couldn't fight himself out of a peanut shell.
But after all that, didn't he go on to say that entropy doesn't increase? And was caught wrong on that?
Yeah, he said it's not high
Do I
pressure
remember
to
that
low
right?
pressure. He said it's not high pressure to low pressure. And then suddenly his White Knight couldn't help him out and made him look really stupid after saying, "Oh, I don't think they know."
He actually said that?
Yeah. And then his man the whole time who was, I think Nathan's losing. And then Nathan asked him, so does entropy not increase? He said no.
Wow.
It's ridiculous, man. These guys are nuts.
Well, that's why I said he can't fight himself out of a peanut shell, because he's nuts.
But feel free, if they find pain relief in exposing my very, very limited knowledge on many things, then if that relieves your pain for a few moments, then be my guest. It won't actually change any of the arguments, but that's all they can find. That's what the scraps are now. Finding a little win against some individual, that'll relieve their pain for a few minutes.
And then after you do that, you might not want to incorrectly describe entropy right after that. Like that takes away the whole. Oh, I gotta win. Snatching your own wig off.
Yeah, you don't know the numerics of your own winning argument, Nathan. How dare you?
Just for the isothermal expansion of an ideal gas, which I think what he was talking about, and getting to those units. I would point out that to do the calculation to then quantify it with units, within the formula, two things. One's called V0 and one's called V1. V0 being the initial volume that you start with, and V0 being the volume that it's going to expand into. They would be required, those volumes, to be calculated to be able to use those units. Volume is required. So if we're talking about the theory of the vacuum of space, then you would have to stick that as an infinity symbol, wouldn't you?
So Adam,
well, no, not
Adam,
infinity.
If we take hot and cold to high pressure, low pressure.
Just 1 second.
I'm sorry.
So no, I've been corrected on that a few times when I say, well, no, they have it as an ever-expanding infinite volume. Well, no, they don't. They actually do have a number for it. QE's corrected me on that several times. They do actually qualify it with a number.
Yeah, well, a very, 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 very big number, which would then, when you calculate it, go from a pressure that you've maintained that we would call an atmosphere to then applying that, if it was able to free expand into that space that you're going to define, it would make P1 so low, wouldn't it, that it would be at the 10 to the minus 17 torr.
I was just about to say,
presuppose.
Exactly, that's where I assume they get that value from. Having a qualifiable V number to give them 10 to the minus 17 torr as the end vacuum.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Isn't it
go on.
3.58 times 10 to the 80 of cubic meters?
There you go.
Some crazy shit like that.
There you go. There's your V. Absolutely stonking enormous.
Hey Adam, if we were to change the argument to hot to cold, does hot go to cold, and does it always happen?
I'm yet to see. Yeah, my cold cup of tea get warmer.
Okay, so if I say at what rate does hot go to cold, does it matter?
Well, not unless you're wanting to use that rate for something. But no, even if let's put it this way: even if you didn't know the units, your tea's going to get colder.
Well, one thing I do know, right? Yeah,
the rate that it happens still proves what I said.
10th, regardless of me not knowing joules per Kelvin, what I do remember from one of those MIT lectures, right, was that graph with that rate, right? So the rate, if you were to plot it out on a graph, would be very, very high at first, and as time progresses, it gets lower. In other words, initially, your cup of tea dissipates a huge amount of heat, and then as time progresses, the amount that it dissipates to the air around it gets less and less and less and less and less and less and less over time. So it's very high initially, very low at the end. In other words, while I couldn't give you the units on the graph, I remember what the graph looked like.
Right, but it doesn't take away from your point of the argument that it happens.
Naturally, it happens. You've got to put that qualifier in. We're talking about laws of nature. So does hot? If you say it as follows, right? Hot will always go to cold. What about if I boil a kettle? Well, that's just not natural, though, is it? So in nature. So when we're talking about a cup of tea, you're talking about something that's been introduced as being hot by a very natural form, and then watching what happens after the natural surroundings take hold, i.e. when you've got a natural entropy increase being observed in my graph, which starts high and ends low.
But boiling a kettle is the same
spontaneously,
example,
right?
I got a good
boiling
one.
the kettle, you've got the entropy, the hot to cold is the hot element transferring into the cold water. It's still the same.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, Adam. You're right. Yes, that's correct.
How about when I go to the beach and the sun is out and the sand is super hot, and then when the sun goes down, the sand, it doesn't stay super hot; it cools down. That's naturally occurring.
Sure.
Yeah, and
that's it. No, I mean they can't destroy the argument. They're going to say, "Well, how many units is it cooling down?
How many units? Who's
cares?
asking how many units?
Let's just fill you in. So let's just fill you in. So we're talking
Wait,
about.
I'll be back a bit. I got water dog, but yeah, I'll see you later. See you in a bit, guys.
Okay. So I was being grilled because I didn't know joules per Kelvin as the qualifier for an entropy increase.
Oh,
exactly.
Grilled by who?
Grilled by a cum virus. My
virus.
A cum virus and all these knuckleheads. We taught them the second law of thermodynamics. And you come back and ask us what the units are, thinking you got to win or something after we taught you it? Friggin' bozos. Tell you what, people need to be arrested, man. For fraud. You have the friggin' nads to ask or try to pin us down after we taught you it? Appalling.
You're saying it's buying.
It's actually a defense mechanism. They already know they lost the argument, so they got to get something before they go out looking really, really bad and say, "Well, how many units does it happen by?" Like, well, are you admitting to it then?
Mr. changes his pants and he doesn't leave them. Freaking clown.
It's called biting the hand that feeds you. That's what QE's saying. Ever heard that? Biting the hand that feeds you?
Yep, that's exactly what's happening, yeah. It pissed me off this morning. That's all I need.
But exactly, you did exactly what I did, which is who cares? You know, knowing the units, it's qualitative versus quantitative, right? Does it matter about how quickly or the rate or the number that's been ascribed or the unit? It's expanding into a space, debunking the sky vacuum, so who cares?
Yep. Yep. Doesn't really matter. Where is the knucklehead?
Well, he's in chat somewhere, but let's go back to that statement. He said he changes his pants and he doesn't leave them. Wouldn't that make him having two pairs then?
So this is when we're juxtaposing reference frames, leaving reference frames. So you step onto a roundabout, then you're changing from an inertial reference frame, if you're describing it from the roundabout, onto the non-inertial reference frame, again, as described from the roundabout. So you are, by virtue of changing your position, changing your reference frame. Well, his assertion was that you can keep your reference frame whilst moving your position, like taking your pants with you after you've taken
You're breaking
them off.
up, Nathan.
And what, sorry?
You're breaking up.
Who's playing music?
Sleeping Warrior.
Sleeping Warrior, you're ruining everything. Of course. Bloody hell. Ugh.
I remember that show. I think he said, well, where are the pants? He goes, well, what if I throw it on my shoulder? I go, well, that's an idiot. Pants are meant for your legs.
So yeah, he's saying you step off the roundabout, but you still got the same reference frame. And his analogy was to say that if you take off your pants, like stepping off the reference frame that's spinning, you can still take your pants with you. So you've not got your pants on, but you've still got them with you. So you can step off the non-inertial reference frame and still be in the non-inertial reference frame. That was his argument.
Yeah, but who
And
wears
that was
pants
him
on their
coming
shoulder?
That was him coming off trying to stand up for Zanuck, who was making that argument that you can't change or leave reference frames.
What, didn't we have Miley Cyrus?
Yeah,
or something?
that's me.
Yeah,
So, that was my rebuttal to Zanuck. So in rebuttal to that, which was being defended or white knighted by a common virus, Zanuck had asserted precisely that. You can't change reference frames. I'm like, well, if I get on and off a pendulum, then I've gone from one reference frame to the other. And he's like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, I can. I'm Miley fucking Cyrus, okay?
Hey, no swearing.
Well, that's what I said. I'm just quoting myself.
How many times? Who's the winner? Rumpus or Zanuck for compromising himself live? What would you say?
I'd probably say Rumpus.
I would say Rumpus just because he's
Yeah.
been in the game longer.
Yeah. All right.
And Zanuck is taking a hiatus from here. Rumpus still comes
Mr.
back
Liquid
every
Gas.
once in a while.
Also, Zanuck's got a tell. So when he does do that, and it's pointed out, he'll normally have a little chuckle. I shouldn't really reveal that I know his tell, but there we go. He'll normally concede it by a way of a little giveaway chuckle.
Yep. I know it.
Rumpus
Where's
doesn't.
Mr. Liquid
What Rumpus
Gas?
does, Rumpus's tactic in that scenario is to instantly double down on it. So when it happens, I like to clear the airwaves because you can normally get the repetition of it as clear as crystal, dedicated to air, because he'll double down on it. That's normally Rumpus. I shouldn't reveal this either, really, but there we go. I don't want being a bit loose-lipped here. Shit.
You're not revealing anything everybody's heard. We do have a geometric horizon. We don't have geometric horizon.
Yes, we do.
Well, on what day was that? Wednesday, the 30th of December, 2020. Rumpus gave us a minimum of 4, but here's a few. Grumpus, gravity is not a force, nor is it a gravity is not a force, nor is it a container. And then he says, gas springs, Rumpus is conceptual. He says, gas have little springs, and they're pulling it down to Earth. And then he said, the best one, gravity is insufficient to hold gas to the Earth.
Sure, that's what he
That
said.
was just in one show.
No, I'm sure that wasn't a verbatim quote. I'm sure he said, gravity is insufficient to hold the gas there.
Where?
You can contextualize it all you like. I'm just quoting him verbatim. That's all I'm doing.
Okay, but where is the gas being held then?
Yeah, contextually, we're talking about Earth, right? We're talking about this in debate about Earth and its nature. So obviously the context is relevant. But we're talking about him with an example. God, I've got to repeat this now. I didn't think it was that important at the time. Well, what about containing a fart on a scale by example? His reply, well, gravity would be insufficient to hold the gas there.
Wasn't that a fart?
Moving on.
Oh, so it wasn't a fart. Okay, you missed a big one from that one. He said, what about the liquid gas?
Oh, that was a good one. The liquid gas, you say? That was great.
Yes. Yeah, that made the top 50. By the way, I only need 4 more to make the top 50. I mean, to have it fulfilled. 4 more.
Just 4 more gaffes from Rumpus. Okay, nice to know.
Where's Rumpus at? Get him on here. I need 4 more.
Well, Virus will
more
give you
gaffes.
5 real quick if he comes on.
Don't even know if he's here. He might be here. No,
Let's see the last ones.
No, it's not here.
Hold on a second. Oh. So we got the Rumpus. Do you think liquid gas has got the same mass as another form of something? Gases effectively have little springs on them, pulling them towards the Earth. No, there's no such thing as natural laws. Measuring things is not maths, and pendulums go around in a figure eight.
Great. Somebody keeps asking me to republish that. It's like, when are you going to republish? I think it's like 1286 or something like that. And I'm like, it's already premiered. It doesn't work like that. You can't just re-premiere it. Once it's gone out, that's its premiere. And here's the link to it. Go and watch it again. But, and I've trimmed it out as a clip. With full on, I went through a lot of effort to edit in proper graphics with it. With him saying those things unimpeded. He doesn't know what a pendulum does. Amazing.
That's been his argument from the beginning, by the way. He brought that pendulum out in 2016 in our debate, in my debate with him.
Unreal. I've obviously got a set
and he
game
doesn't
plan.
even know what it is. How many years later?
And he still thinks he won that debate. That's the hysterical part.
Anthony pointed this out to me, right? The consistency level with Rumpus in these sorts of nonsensical doublespeaks are at very least consistent. In other words, it seems like there's a set type of doublespeak that he will adhere to. And some of them, they get closer together in terms of the contradiction if we force it to that position. I.e., yes, we do have a geometric horizon. No, we don't. No, we don't. Or the other way around. Those sorts of contradictions, he'll at least be consistent. And Anthony took me back to some really old debates where he was saying similar things. And it's really hard to find a contradiction. You look back and find one because you've got a new argument. So the last one I can remember actually doing this with was the Black Swan, when he was talking about, its position because of, it's looming because of its respect with position to the horizon. Let's just try that one more time. It's looming because of its position with respect to the horizon. That's correct. That's the exact quote from Rumpus. Now, bearing in mind that he was then, at the time when the Black Swan came out, trying to loom the horizon. In other words, move the horizon with respect to the horizon. And I got him saying that. So it's like, but it was rare. You don't necessarily catch him out in a contradiction. It's more that you want to catch it in the same breath. That's what you got to try and angle for. Because the actual contradiction, he'll be playing out consistently for years and years and years on end. It's just getting those two things close together. And we've done that plenty with him. You can get him to say his contradiction sometimes in the same sentence, which is epic.
Oh yeah, I caught him numbers of times.
Hang on, John. If I call a clock store and say, "Do you have a grandfather clock that has a pendulum that does a figure eight?" What do you think their response would be?
Pendulums go back and forth. It's a very simple, well understood principle.
Yeah, but a guy named Rumpus told me there's a pendulum that does a figure eight. Do you have one of those clocks?
Yeah, but he can't ever take it beyond that. He'd rather fall into the assumption of stupidity than actually say, yeah, the reason it's moving in a figure of eight is because we're claiming the back and forth motion of the pendulum is actually subject to a not actual deflection because Earth's turning underneath the pendulum. And at that moment, he's admitting that that's the actual rhetoric, which can never be argued here at trench level. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson can argue it, unchallenged, with some fawning sycophant sat next to him. But here at trench level, it must never be uttered that Earth is claimed to turn underneath stuff. And at that detriment, he would rather look like a complete idiot than ever utter those words and say that pendulums just move in a figure of eight. Well, if they just move in a figure of eight, as he's actually arguing in that scenario, much to the look of his stupidity, then there'd be no point in using them. If they moved in a figure of eight, well, that's just what pendulums do, right? Well, no, it's claimed that they appear to move in a figure of eight because it's claimed Earth turns underneath them. That's the very purpose of the Foucault pendulum. It's supposed to be proving Earth turns underneath, something that they very much argue against here. They argue that Earth and atmosphere travel together as one reference frame. Well, Earth turning underneath the pendulum is two reference frames, something they must not argue at trench level at all costs. Like I say, he'll rather look stupid than argue that, because that's where we win. So Earth's turning underneath the pendulum, Rumpus. Oh, well, then it's turning underneath aeroplanes and turning underneath men on trampolines. And you and your reference frames are ruined. So he must never ever utter that Earth turns underneath stuff. But that's what's precisely being claimed by Foucault. So I'd rather look stupid and say it moves in a figure of eight.
I remember that because I asked him directly before you took over that one day. I said, Rumpus, just answer this. Is the Earth rotating underneath? And he avoided it, and he finally admitted to it, and that's when you took over. Got to hand it to him. He takes one for the Globe team by looking stupid to avoid the obvious.
Yeah, because he can't possibly assert as Neil deGrasse Tyson does. And the closest he came to ever even vaguely admitting to it was to say, well, that's a sloppy description. Like, no, that is the specific rhetoric you claim, Coriolis deflection, because we turn underneath. Well, that's sloppy. You mean you'd rather not admit it? You'd rather ham-handedly, tacitly admit it, but ultimately say it's wrong by saying it's sloppy? Because you're not allowed to argue that here at Trench Level. You're only allowed to argue that Earth and atmosphere travel as one, and we wouldn't expect to see 15 degrees an hour deviation, flying in the face of the claim that Coriolis and pendulums make. So they'd rather have flat earthers make those assertions, which is why they entrap people like Bob Nodell into making the assertion for them. So then they can debunk the assertion, and Trench Level fundies can continue to beg the question that Earth travels with an atmosphere that moves with the Earth, giving you no Coriolis deflection. Well, that works out nicely. Have the priests claim that you do have it, have the Trench Level fundies claim that you don't, and have every description about Coriolis leave you with a complete confusion about what's actually supposed to be occurring. Well, is it stuff moving down drains in anti-clockwise or clockwise motion? No, unless you're going down the drain with it, watching not actual drift. Well, is it hurricanes moving at various different positions on the Earth that's spherical? No, not unless you're in the hurricane, watching not actual drift. It's you on a roundabout, seeing things that aren't on the roundabout appear to move. That's what Coriolis. So you on an Earth that turns, seeing things seem to move, because you're turning underneath them. Now, if that was to be the case, we'd have stuff drifting away. And it doesn't. So Trench Level fundies must argue how, no, we wouldn't expect to see things drifting away. Earth and atmosphere travel together. Well, no, if that's the case, we haven't got Coriolis. But they couldn't possibly utter that Earth's supposed to turn underneath stuff. As I say, Rumpus would rather look stupid and claim that figure of 8 motion in a pendulum, well, what use is it then? Well, it isn't if that was the case, and it's not. But that little obfuscation is enough for him to get away with never stating what the claim actually is, that Earth turns underneath stuff not attached. We'd notice.
Well, if Earth and atmosphere traveled with the Earth, and the Earth supposedly in their presupposed model is going west to east, then air would always be going west to east.
That's correct.
So then when you watch...
It's so stupid.
It's
beyond stupid.
Well, when you watch...
It's no. This goes down to our gas molecules attached to each other. Because that's the first prerequisite. But which is batshit insane. Right? That's not gas molecule behavior. You can walk out... As soon as you feel an east wind, it's over.
Right.
Yeah. I work with golfers. I golf. Many people listen to the show golf. And as you traverse 18-hole golf course, it's going in different directions. And you have to adjust for the wind when the wind is really howling. So one time the wind is from back to front, so it's helping your ball fly further. Other times it's straight into it. Other times it's side to side. So every golfer knows that the argument is stupid.
Indeed. With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and Google panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!